If we took out everyone with 10 or more years of experience in the NBA and put them out there to go play FIBA basketball, how many of us would be confident that that group would come back with the gold?
I'm going straight to the top. Just put the stack on the clock. I am Ray Allen's a shot. I'm going straight to the top.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Mike Philman here with the Sports of the Real Shit podcast. I appreciate you joining me once again. As always, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, wherever. I appreciate you listening, watching, liking, commenting, whatever it is, right? There's not much else for me to say on that front. All right, so let's jump right into it. Today, couple of topics today. First, so I thought I was gonna have some time to talk about some other things, because basketball's over, NBA's over, right? NBA season's over. NFL hasn't really started yet. Thought I'd have time to touch on some other topics before things got crazy. Free agency in the NBA and all that, but not really. That's okay. And I'll talk about this later, but the leagues now, the NFL and the NBA, are year-round. There is no such thing as the offseason anymore as it pertains to content. Anytime news can break, somebody can do something stupid or a trade. Anything can happen at any time. So there's no more off-season, which is good for people like me who like to talk about basketball and football. Maybe not so great for other leagues. I'll touch on that as well. But wanted to get right into it. So first of all, I want to say, can we, and when I say we, I'm not talking about me, I'll say we though. Can people get off Damian Lillard's back? I want to use another term there. Can people get off of Damian Lillard's back? Like, all the guy wants to do is play basketball as hard as he can, try to win a championship, but he's loyal. And personally, I appreciate his loyalty. Others don't care. Right? Others just like the entertainment value, but they don't really care. I appreciate the loyalty and relationships, family, whatever, right? I'm big on loyalty. So I appreciate Dame's loyalty to Portland. So people, last couple of years, people have been all over Damian Lillard talking about, well, he should get away from Portland, get out of Portland. It's crazy how the media does it, right? They put out the bait, right? They put out the words, Damian Lillard should look to get out of Portland. And then Damian doesn't say anything. So when he doesn't, they get on him for it. Well, he should want to get out of Portland if he wants to win. And when he does speak on it, people are like, well, he wants to get out to go win because he can't win alone. Like, the truth is, and this is not just for Damian, but for others as well, but for Damian Lillard's situation specifically, the truth is Damian Lillard is in a no-win situation, right? If he says he wants to stay, people are going to say, well, he doesn't want to win. If he says he wants to go elsewhere, people are gonna want to say, well, he's trying to go, he's chasing a championship. If he goes elsewhere and he wins, people are going to say, well, he couldn't win on his own, right? He wasn't the number one on the team. He couldn't win on his own. Kind of like how they did KD. He couldn't win without Steph. If he goes elsewhere and he loses, people are going to say, well, we knew he couldn't win on his own. He's not as good as Steph anyway. Like, no matter what he does, Damian Lillard is in a no-win situation. If he stays, they're going to bag on him. If he goes and he wins, they're going to bag on him. They're going to say he didn't carry that team. He joined a super team, blah, 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 blah. If he goes and he loses, he doesn't win the chip, they're going to say, well, he could never win one. No matter what the situation is. Like, he's in a lose-lose situation, which is ridiculous. And the media and fans just say these things. It's like, are they intentionally trying to trap the players? Like, what is the point of trying to get Dame out of Portland? The man loves the city. He's a loyal dude, which I appreciate. His family is probably settled there. Like, let the man hoop. Like, we already know Dame is great. Like, there is nothing Damian Lillard can do between now and, joining another team, or before he retires, that we don't already know. He doesn't need a championship. And that's why this whole championship or bust conversation is so stupid. We already know who Damian Lillard is. Like, Damian Lillard in this generation of players, like, he's like the second, at worst, third best point guard of his generation. And there's nothing he can do to change that in some people's eyes. If he goes to another team and he goes to, let's say he went to the Suns and he wins, they're not going to give him the credit. They're going to say he joined a super team. So in those people's eyes, he's going to be lower than Steph regardless. He's never going to be the best point guard ever. Like, winning a chip right now for Damian is going to do nothing. So I don't get it. I don't get this trying to bully this guy to leave and to get an answer. And, like, the answer he gives is never going to be right for nobody. People saying he doesn't want to compete. What the hell is that about? The man's been playing his heart out for however long he's been in Portland. I've never watched Damian Lillard play basketball and been like, he's mailing it in. He's always playing hard, like doing the best he can. Like, some of those teams had no business, going as far as they did in the playoffs. But he balled out. Him, CJ, like he balled out. He did the best he could. But for whatever reason, if he doesn't get a ring, he's going to be looked at as lesser than. Like, no, man. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. There are great players on bad teams or teams that aren't that great. Not everyone is LeBron James, and it's okay. Like, Damian Lillard had a hell of a career, or has had a hell of a career since it's not done yet. And there's nothing he can do to change that. If he wins a championship right now, that doesn't automatically elevate him to, whatever status. It is what it is. Of this generation of PGs, Dame is like second, third. And in my eyes, and I've said this before, in my eyes, the distance between number one, which to me number one is probably Steph, the distance between number one and Dame, Steph and Dame, is not that far. The difference is the teams they're on. If Steph is on Portland the last 10, 12 years, however long it's been, he ain't got no chips either. Let's be honest about that. He doesn't have any chips either. So we're having totally different conversations. So this chip or bust conversation is dumb, is stupid. And in this instance, I'm going to defend Damian Lillard. I'm sorry. Like, he's done the best he can. He hasn't had championship rosters. Let's be honest about that. In Portland, he hasn't had championship rosters to say, okay, well, he's failed to. No. In big games, he showed up. In playoffs, he has showed up. He makes clutch shots. Like, there's nothing. He can't prove anything else in the playoffs, because in the playoffs, he's performed. He's not one of those dudes, and I'm not going to say any names right now. He's not one of those dudes who in the playoffs doesn't show up. He shows up in the playoffs. In clutch moments, we know the big-time shots he's made. Like, get off the dude's back, man. No matter what he does, he ain't getting full credit. So what's the point? What's the point of this discussion? What's the point of trying to pressure the man, bully the man into another team? No matter what he does, if he stays, he's wrong. If he goes and wins, he's wrong. If he goes and doesn't win, he's wrong. There's nothing he can do right now to satisfy people. So if I'm Damian Lillard, I'm staying where I am. It is what it is. He's a baller. He's not one of these guys on bad teams who's getting, like, who you can tell, right? So there's a difference. And for those who have basketball eyes, right, and a basketball mind, and eye for the game and a mind for the game, you can tell the difference between a guy who's on a bad team who gets a lot of points, but if he ever played on a good team, he wouldn't be able to sustain that, and a guy who actually is carrying a bad team, scoring a lot of points, and if he went on a semi-good team, he would be even better. And that's Damian. So he's not the guy getting a lot of points because he's taking a lot of shots on a bad team. He's a great player who's stuck on a mediocre at best to bad teams lately. So we know who you are, bro. I know who you are. Maybe a few others. At worst, in this generation, the third best PG. That's a rant, man. I'm sorry. Like, I hate this ring or bust conversation. It's so dumb. It's elementary. It's really, I think, it's just to drive content, right? So people get on these debate shows in the mornings. There's nothing else to talk about, so let's talk about Dame. Let's fabricate a story about Dame and the fact that he needs a ring to validate his career. Why? Why? A ring ain't going to elevate him right now. Like, people don't understand that. Like, I've said it before and I'll say it again. A ring is not what made Michael Jordan the GOAT. 6 rings is not what made Michael Jordan the GOAT. The only people who think so are people who don't know what they're watching. LeBron James was the best basketball player of his generation before he won a single ring. He didn't have to go to Miami to be the GOAT of his generation and to be in the conversation with Michael Jordan. He didn't have to. We watched it. We watched the guy carry bad Cavs teams early on. Even before he won a championship, we watched that. We watched him put up the numbers, and they weren't insignificant numbers because he had the results to back up his numbers. We watched that. We didn't need Bron to win rings. You didn't need Michael Jordan to win 6 rings to know that back in his day, he was the best player in the league. Before Michael Jordan won a championship with the Bulls, he was already the best player in the league. I know Scotty had his thing to say about that. Scotty, my guy. But he was already the best player in the league. If you watch the games, you can see that. Like, rings should not factor into GOAT status because rings are team accomplishments. Bill Russell has 11 freaking championships, man. Why? Because those Boston Celtics teams in the 50s and 60s were loaded. They had all the Hall of Famers on the one damn team. 8 teams in the league. So he has 11 chips. So when it comes to GOAT conversations, we don't talk about Bill Russell. Because we're looking at the game. So let's not do it for Bill. Let's not do it for Jordan, for LeBron. I've said it before. I'll say it again. If you can't have a best player conversation by talking about their individual games and what they do on the basketball court, now results matter. I'm not saying results don't matter. But championships takes full team like participation. You ain't gonna have a guy up here in a big drop off and say, "Oh, you won a championship." So when people try to act like somebody carried a team, it's never happened. It's never gonna happen. So asking Dame to leave behind Portland to go chase a ring makes no sense. Unless he just wants to win a ring, like to compete for a championship. That's on him, right? He can do that, right? He's free to do that. But people forcing him out of Portland to go chase a ring as if that's going to prove something, it ain't. It's just going to give you more to talk about. You're going to put more fake pressure on him. Because if he goes out there and he fails, you're going to blame it on him and you're going to say he was never that dude and all that stuff. You're never going to give him credit if he wins. You're going to treat him like you do KD now. Like, what's the incentive? Zero. So get off the dude's back, man. Get off the dude's back. Anyway, like I said, offseason wasn't really offseason. It's jumping off in the NBA. Bradley Beal got traded to the Suns, or is being traded, I guess. This may not be official yet. I don't know, man. That trade doesn't really move me. I like Brad Beal. He's a baller. But I think him and Devin Booker are repetitive. They're like the same cats. Snipers, can attack off the dribble, mid-range game, three-point game. I think they're the same dudes, if you ask me. The problem with Phoenix last year was, yeah, they of course they're gonna be better with Brad Beal. I'm not saying they're not gonna be better, but I still don't think they challenge Denver because they still don't have nobody in the paint to body up to bang with the Joker, right? Like this guy is public enemy number one right now. If you're building a team, like how do I stop the Joker and all the action that comes off of him, his passing, his scoring, setting picks. Like, that's what you got to deal with. They were trying to get rid of Ayton, but they couldn't. As long as he's still there, I don't think they're beating Denver. Unless they get a quality backup. Because he's going to stay in foul trouble. He doesn't play strong enough. I'm sorry, man. I can't help it. Unless he totally changes his offseason and puts in the work to be his best self. Because athletically, he's gifted, but he just doesn't live up to it. When you watch him play, it's soft. I didn't want to say it. So they're still not going to have any defense with Bradley Beal. They're going to score more, but they're not going to have any defense. I want to see how they fill out their roster because right now they still don't have any depth. So it's not like they're unbeatable. All right? It's different from Braun and the Heatles. And KD joining the Warriors. Like, the Warriors team was already a well-oiled machine. They were going back to the championship regardless. I don't know if they would have beaten LeBron and the Cavs, but they were going back to the championship. Like, that team was humming on all cylinders. They didn't really need KD, but when you added KD, then it became unfair. Like LeBron and the Heatles, right? Even though they were top heavy, but LeBron is so great that he's able to create chemistry because he can play so many roles. He's not just scoring, right? Whereas the Suns right now, the Suns just got 3 scorers. Who's facilitating? So LeBron can go score, he can facilitate. So he can pass D-Wade the ball, he can pass Chris Bosh the ball, Udonis, these guys. And then he can still get his. Like LeBron is like, I say this, like LeBron is like almost worth 2 all-star players. Like the greats at that level, they're worth almost like 1.5, 2 all-star players. Meaning, like if your team has LeBron James and the other team has, say, one other all-star player, LeBron's team is going to beat your team because LeBron is actually worth more than just that one. Like he's so great, you need like 2 on 1. At least 2 on 1 against him. So that's what made the Heatles so different and the Warriors so different is that LeBron is able to create the chemistry because he can score, he can pass, he can run the point, like he can run the show. So Phoenix is still lacking somebody to facilitate. Yeah, they're gonna put up some points in the regular season, but I think they'll struggle against the best teams. Like I said, they still lack depth, so we'll see how they fill out the roster. And I don't know who's playing defense. I know Book has gotten better on defense. KD plays pretty good defense, but still lacking. Interior defense is still lacking, I think. So they're not unbeatable. I'm not scared of them. I wouldn't be scared of them if I was Denver, but they'll be better. And if their chemistry, if they gel, then maybe they are a lot better. But we'll see. The next big move, Kristaps Porzingis to the Celtics. And then 3-team move. Tyus Jones leaving the Grizzlies. Yeah, I don't know about that one, man. I think KP's a good player. Obviously, he hasn't lived up to the unicorn hype that Phil Jackson had put on him with the Knicks. Had some injuries early on, but good player. But I don't think Kristaps Porzingis is what the Celtics was lacking. Okay. Can he score? Yeah. Can he score inside? Give him some inside presence more than Horford? Absolutely. But But my thing is, what they were lacking was two things. One, the coach with a stupid 3-point quota, talking about you got to shoot 40, 50. Like, what the hell? That's still bothering me till this day. When your coach is telling you got to put up 40 threes a game, no. All right, so that's still a problem. If the coach is still coaching like that and not actually, running plays and trying to get great shots for the team, then I don't think they'll beat the best teams anyway. Like against the Heat, and even if they had moved on to play Denver, like that, the problem wouldn't have been the answer to the problem wouldn't have been Kristaps Porzingis. It's the fact that their offense is 3-point layup or bust. And they got to get better with that. But what they are lacking, and where I thought they could have improved, is a true PG to settle them down. Right? Like Jaylen Brown could use like a true PG next to him to settle them down. Tatum, get them in their spots, organize the offense. I thought they could have used Tyus Jones, actually. They could have used a Tyus Jones-like player. Like, I think if they get Van Vliet, if the Celtics can get Van Vliet, they'll be all right. Because he has a point guard mentality. He can settle the offense down when they get kind of herky-jerky, taking bad shots. He can settle them down. Hey, fellas, let's settle down. Let's get a good shot here. And that's where LeBron is so good, man. And I don't want to keep gassing up Bron. But Bron is so good because he's smart like that. He can sense the tempo of the game changing. And I don't know if there's really many guys, anybody else in the league that does that. Like maybe him and Chris Paul. Or like really the two, like when you think of the star players that really can control the tempo of the game. And Chris obviously is older. Well, so is Bron. But that's been Bron's thing. Is like other cats seem like they just running up and down the court, getting tired. Bron is able to control tempo. And a good point guard can control tempo. They can organize the offense. Hey, guys, we're rushing shots. We're taking too many threes. Let's slow down. We're jacking up too many step backs, Jason. Let's slow down. Let's take a better shot, bro. So I think Van Vliet can help him with that. Somebody like Tyus Jones, his numbers are never going to pop. Tyus Jones' numbers are never going to pop out at you. But he's good at that, and that he's smart basketball. He plays with his mind and not just running up and down the court, jacking up shots. So I don't know. We'll see what the Celtics do at point guard. They have a hole there. So we'll see. Grizzlies are going to miss Tyus Jones. All right? They're going to miss Tyus Jones. And I know they got tougher. They got some vet, assistants for job probably. And Marcus Smart. That's probably what it was. Somebody to be in his ear. But Marcus is not really a true point guard like that. Like to organize the offense, settle them down. So I think they're going to miss Tyus Jones in Memphis. What else? Chris Paul's trade to Golden State. That one's a little sus to me. I'm not going to lie. Is Chris Paul going to be a backup point guard, I guess? 17, 18 minutes a night? Is that what it's going to be? Can Chris Paul play with Draymond? Like, if Chris Paul is on the court with Draymond, Draymond is basically useless on offense. And if Draymond is running, the offense when Chris Paul's in the game, Chris Paul's not a spot-up three-point shooter. So I don't know if those two can coexist. I know they're both smart. They may be able to get it for short periods of time. But for longer periods of time, they'll get exposed. Because if I'm guarding Draymond and he's not the one handling the ball, or he's not the one setting the picks, like, okay, you stand in the corner and shoot threes. I'll let you have that, Dre. So I don't see how those two play together. So I think maybe Chris comes off the bench. I don't know. Golden State still has holes. They'll probably try to fill it. They traded Poole away. Poole's going to put up some numbers, but he's going to fool a lot of people into into thinking he's something he's not. He's going to put up some numbers probably, but it is what it is. I talked earlier about Lillard, bad team putting up numbers. Some guys put up numbers on bad teams. I think Poole on a bad team can put up numbers, but as a lead guy, Jordan Poole's not going to take you anywhere. So they still lack size. They still lack a bench with the Warriors, but we'll see what happens. I'm not sure of the fit. That's all I'm saying. I don't know of the fit of Chris Paul and Dre on the court together. I don't know how it works. All right. And really, Chris Paul and Steph is kind of quirky too, because really Chris likes to handle the ball. Right? He's going to dribble the ball, run his pick and roll, orchestrate, penetrate, dish. Whereas Steph, right, that first team offense, they're like, Steph is just zigzagging, running all over the court. So you're not penetrating and dishing with Steph. You're essentially, standing out there waiting for him to pop open. Like, Draymond be playing like hot potato with Steph. Like, as soon as he pops out, boom, he gives him the ball. That's different than what Chris Paul's more, I'm going to run the pick and roll, run around the pick, orchestrate, you roll, this guy's open, like, use his vision and all that. So if he runs the second team, I guess that'll be a different offense. But who's all on the second team with him? Again, lack of depth, lack of size, we'll see. So none of these trades here are really moving me, but we got to talk about them. It's the NBA. I guess it's fun to talk about. Fans love that kind of stuff. All right. Enough of off-season talk. So I've coached my kids, and for those who are familiar with I-9, so I coach my boys. 3 of my boys play in I-9 leagues, and I-9 is like the most basic elementary of, paid leagues, right? You put your kids in if you put your kids in I-9, like they're literally just learning about basketball, the fundamentals. Like that's the point of it, right? It's like everybody gets a trophy in I-9. Everybody gets participation trophy. When you hear about participation trophies, I-9 is the type of league for participation trophies. All right. So I coach my 3 sons in I-9 leagues. They're in separate leagues because of their ages. But having coached them, so I coached them last fall, 2022, and in the spring. Having coached them has really opened my eyes to the state of basketball in the U.S. and some really huge issues with basketball in the U.S. I don't think a lot of people notice that. It's probably been mentioned here and there, but I don't think as a whole people have put it all together in terms of how bad things are and how bad things are going to get in certain aspects as it relates to USA basketball in the U.S. And I think we need to have like real conversations about that. First thing, having coached I-9 basketball, you ever look at kids, or not just kids, you ever look at basketball players, athletes, right, and be like, man, this guy doesn't really love the sport. He's a good player, but he doesn't really love it. Like I'm watching the NBA, you can tell a lot of guys don't love it. They don't love the competition. They don't love to compete. They love the money. They love the glory and the fame, but they don't love it. Same with football. But we'll stick to basketball for now. A lot of guys play and they play well, but I don't know if you can tell they don't really love it. Their actions prove that they don't love it. And I think it all goes back to when they were kids. Again, this is me having coached 2 seasons of I-9 basketball of my kids and having coached other kids. Okay? These teams are made up of kids. Literally, these are kids, many of them, instead of teaching them the fundamentals of basketball, I'm having to teach them the fundamentals of sport. I'm having to teach them how to run properly, stretching, and like bending your knees when you run. And like in sports, you can't run straight. You got to bend your knees. And I'm dead serious. And my three of I got 5 boys, for those who don't know me. The 3 older ones, right? They're in a first and second grade, or first and third grade. So it's like 7, 8 years old, 7, 8, 9 years old league team. And then, the older ones in the 12, 13 age group now. And it sucks to watch kids who are really in both age groups, but really the 12, 13-year-old group who don't know anything about sports, like who don't know how to bend your knees and run. And this all goes back to the fact that physical education, PE, has been reduced dramatically in schools. Like a lot of kids now barely have true PE where they're learning these sports. Like my kids, they've been in school, obviously the 12-year-old's going to 7th grade now. He has never played like softball and baseball in PE, kickball. He doesn't know these things. I'm like, what the hell is going on? That's because PE has been drastically reduced from schools. They're not being funded. Like, these guys don't know how to put on a baseball glove. Like, I knew how to put on a baseball glove, 3rd grade. So as a result, a lot of these kids' first exposure to sports, stay with me, y'all. Stay with me on this part, because this is like, I'm going to bring this all together. A lot of kids' first exposure to sports is these paid leagues. There's no PE, or very little PE, and this generation now is just the full video game generation, meaning these kids were born with iPads in their hands. So they've been in video games their whole lives. You essentially have to kick them out of the house for them to go do something outside. Go play basketball, go run around, do anything. So as a result, their first exposure to sports and sweating and competing, like competing in person and not competing on a video game, is through a paid league like I-9. They have no real exposure to anything else. So whereas somebody like me, by the 6th grade, I was, trying out for a basketball team in middle school. Ain't no way these kids I'm coaching now can try out for anything. For the most part. There's a couple dudes who could actually play. But for the most part, these kids aren't ready to try out for anything. They wouldn't know how to try out. They wouldn't know what to do. So I'm teaching these kids how to basically run while also trying to teach them the basics of basketball, because it's only like 6-week leagues. And it's crazy. Like one of these games, this last season, the ref comes up to me. He's like, yo, how old are you, man? I'm like, I'm 42. He's like, yeah, I'm like 48, 49 or something like that. He's like, did you have to? He didn't even have to finish his sentence. I knew what he was talking about. Meaning the way these kids are playing, I'm like, how are you in the 6th, 7th grade? Don't know some of these basic things. But your parents are paying. These leagues are like $170, $180 for 6 games. So imagine, every couple months, your parents are having to shell out close to $200 to force you to play a sport. I'm telling you right now, if that was the case back in my day, I would have never played basketball because my mom wouldn't have been able to afford it. So as a result, basketball and sports for these kids, for many of them, is now transactional. They don't love it. They'd prefer to be on their iPad and computer and PlayStation all game, Xbox all day. They don't love it, but it's transactional because now their parents are forcing them and they have to go out there. And it becomes, for some of them, it's frustrating because they don't want to be there. And for the parents, it's frustrating because parents want to see their kids play. And in these leagues, you can't show any preference. Like, you're really just literally like, going off a list saying, first five, second five, first five comes back in, that type of thing. Like, there is no, I have a star player, I'm going to ride them, you're going to sit on the bench. No, everybody has to play because everybody gets a participation trophy. And I remember the first season I coached, one of these kids' moms wants to get mad at me saying she thinks I'm benching her son. I'm trying to tell the lady, no, I'm not benching your son. I'm literally just calling out names because everybody here, I wanted to tell her, like, everybody here sucks. Nobody here on this team knows what they're doing, including my own son. And I'm ashamed to say that. All of these kids here are iPad babies, man. You guys are forcing your kids to come play in this league, paying almost $200 for 6 weeks of play to learn the fundamentals of basketball, fundamentals of sport. But she wants to come talk to me after the game saying her son didn't play enough. Lady, I don't know if your son played enough or not. I'm just calling out names. So the parents are frustrated too because they're paying money and they're wanting to see their kids play. Everything is transactional. There's a cost associated with it. So the parents are stressed, the kids are stressed because a lot of them don't even want to be there. And the ones that do want to be there, they're struggling to learn because they're starting from such low points, things that you would normally have picked up in PE. Like how to dribble a basketball, you would have learned that in PE. You would have learned not to double dribble in PE. In the United States, like, basketball is like a basic sport. You learn like these things in PE, but if you don't have PE and if you're not outside playing, then it is what it is. So that's the first part. Basketball in the United States is in trouble, number one, because this iPad generation, kids, they have no PE. And they have no desire, no incentive to go play outside when they could just stay inside and have fun on their, computer, iPad, whatever, all day. So that's number one. Here's my second point about basketball in the United States. And this impacts the NBA. I think basketball is going the way of soccer in the U.S. I'm not just talking about the flopping, okay? I'm not just talking about the flopping on the basketball court. I'm talking about basketball, the development of players in basketball, the way you make it to the NBA, right, is becoming like soccer, meaning the soccer in this country, meaning those who have money will make it. In the future, if you're poor, you're probably not going to get to play basketball in college and in the NBA. Why? First of all, it's too damn expensive. I talked about I-9 leagues. That's $180, $70, $80. Other leagues maybe more than that in other areas for 6 weeks of play. Like I said, if that was me growing up, I would have never learned basketball. Because ain't no way my mom would have been able to afford $180 every 6 weeks. But now, you got to play AAU. If you don't play AAU now, you probably ain't going to college, man, on a scholarship. You're not. I was reading up on this. 71% of NBA players played AAU basketball. And AAU ain't cheap. AAU runs a couple $1,000s a year when you factor in traveling and all that stuff for your parents. Ain't no way a poor kid's doing that. Of course, there's going to be a few instances that, kids who get lucky, who are found, But it's too expensive. It's prohibitive to poor kids. So poor kids, they don't get PE. Their schools aren't funded. And they can't play AAU because their parents can't afford it. Again, there's going to be a few cats who are super gifted early on and somebody catches their talent and, they're like, oh, man, this kid's nice. Let me help him out. But for the most part, the people who make the NBA now and who are going to be making the NBA in the future are going to be legacy kids, meaning their parents or their dads, former NBA players, former college players, right? Former elite athletes, legacy kids, and just people with money overall. Parents have connections. Again, reading up on this, 49% of NBA players currently are connected to like former athletes, meaning the parents were NBA players, college players, played overseas. Somehow there's connections. So really the NBA is becoming kind of like what we don't like in other aspects of society, right? It's becoming nepotism. And if you have connections, if you have the money, right? If your dad hooped, you'll be able to afford to play in AAU, right? If your dad even played D2, D3, they got connections. You'll be able to afford that stuff. You'll be able to get on people's radars. Right? It's so to me, I'm like, where are the poor kids going? The poor kids are going to be zoned out of this. And again, we don't like it in other aspects of society, but it's happening in the NBA, and I don't know if enough people are making noise about that. It's kind of disturbing, actually, when you think about how it's going to play out in the future. Like, essentially, if you're broke, you literally aren't going to have any. If you're from the hood, you're probably not going to have a chance at the NBA anymore if you don't have any connections like that. Because you're not going to be able to afford AAU. You're not going to have connections, and you're not going to have a trainer, which is another thing. Because now everybody has to have a trainer. Cats start training early on. Personal trainers early on. And to me, both of those things are killing basketball because kids aren't developing naturally anymore. Okay? They're under the microscope of AAU, where AAU is not like I-9, where, everybody gets a participation trophy. Like, cats are trying to win, and you have coaches who are trying to win, and they're not looking out for the best interest of the player. So now you have players going through these AAU programs, and they're coming out, and yeah, they may get a scholarship to go to college, but they're really not good basketball players because their fundamentals ain't good. Like, how many guys, I'm watching the NCAA tournament, and dudes are in the NCAA tournament and can't dribble with their left hand, but they played in AAU. Nobody developed them. And I know there's some AAU programs who aren't like that, who develop, who coaches, but that's not the case. I would say for the most part, that's not the case. And you could tell the fruit in their labor, right? You could tell the fruit by the outcome by watching these guys. Like, yo, these dudes, they might have played AAU, but yeah. Or big men who can't post up, who can't use their height, who can't keep a pivot foot worth of nothing. Where's the coaching? AAU, for the most part, the coaching is lacking. Some cats are going to defend that. That's fine. Defend AAU. I know it's a big deal. Whenever you say anything about AAU, against AAU, cats come out the woodwork. That's fine. But it's the truth. The proof is in the pudding. How many dudes in the NBA, I've said this before, how many big dudes in the NBA, centers, can actually keep a pivot foot? But for the most part, they all played AAU. You can't trust them to score down low. Why? Lack of coaching, lack of developing, because in the AAU, I'm not trying to develop, I'm trying to win. Like, to me, if you come out of an AAU program, any basketball program, and you can't dribble with your offhand, which some players in the NBA can't, and you can't post up as a big man, like, why did you go spend your money? What was the point of that? That's like me putting my kids in piano lessons, after a couple of years, and they don't know, like, the bass and treble clef. Like, what the hell? That's the basics, man. You should be able to play the keys with both hands, bro. If not, the teacher gotta answer some questions. So it's the same thing with AAU to me. I feel like a lot of cats, they go into these programs, and again, their parents are paying money, and the parents are stressed out because they want their kids to be good, and these kids are being ranked at, like, the best fourth grader in the country. Like, what the hell that matters if you're the best third and fourth grader in the country? So that whole ecosystem is not AAU is like a euphemism for the whole concept of paid travel ball leagues. All right, don't get in your feelings for the AAU stands. But the whole concept, the whole ecosystem is first, it's expensive. It's keeping out poor kids, right? It's not open to everybody unless you have connections, and it's going to get even worse as it progresses. And secondly, the coaching is not that great. So the coaching is not that great. You have to get trainers, but again, who can afford trainers? Not the poor kids. So the joint in basketball is becoming like soccer, man. It is. And I don't know if people are noticing it and not saying anything. But to me, I'm sitting there, I'm coaching these because I'm like, damn, the NBA is becoming like soccer, the European soccer, not just the flopping, but the concept of soccer, meaning essentially, their kids are being taken out, prodigies in quotes, are being groomed, but only those who can afford it. Like as an AAU coach, man, you should be ashamed if a kid leaves your program and they can't dribble with their offhand, or a big kid can't post up, can't keep their pivot foot and score. Like, that's problematic. AAU plays 1 million games. Another problem. They play too many games. LeBron has spoken out about it. Kendrick Perkins has spoken out about it. Too many games. And the coaching and, the pressure on the kids because the parents are wilding out, fighting in the stands. Like, it's such a combustible environment because when you're paying for something, man, as a parent, if you're going to pay, thousands of dollars a year, like, you want to see your kid play. Like, you want to see them win. Like, that stuff puts pressure on everybody. It's not an environment for growth and development. Okay? It's just not. So something's got to be done about that. Even the guys who can afford trainers. Tracy McGrady recently talked about this. Whose podcast he was on? Maybe Kevin Garnett's podcast. T-Mac talks about that. Even the guys with the trainers, they're not imaginative, like things you learn on the playground. They're not imaginative. Everybody has the same moves, the same dribble combinations, and everybody's over dribbling. Whereas the point of basketball is to take as least amount of dribbles as possible to get a shot off, to be efficient. But all these kids have crazy combo moves and hezzies and so on. But it leads to them taking 20, 30 dribbles to get a shot off. So I'm just a random guy with the mic, right? But Tracy McGrady, Hall of Famer, one of the best ever pick up a basketball, has the same observation. Like, kids aren't imaginative anymore. They're not actually playing basketball for the love of it and learning in the process. They're playing because they're thrown into it and they have to, and like, they pretty much have, a target on their back, right? They got money on their backs because their parents are paying for it and they have to. So I don't know, man. So it's expensive to play AAU. It's expensive to get a trainer. There's very little coaching for the most part that goes on. It's stressful for the kids and the parents. Ranking fourth graders, what the hell? Like the too many games part, I read an ESPN article a couple of years ago that talks about that, where there may be some association with all these injuries and too many games these kids are playing, right? They're essentially coming into the NBA broken because they play so many games in AAU and travel ball. There's no off season, essentially, right? They're playing so many games on a weekend. LeBron complained one time about the fact that his kids was going to play like 3 games between like 9 and 12 p.m., 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. They were going to play like a whole playoffs, like playoff, semifinal, championship game, like 3 games between 9 and 12 p.m. or something like that. That's a lot. That's taxing on a kid's body. So, yeah, they're worn out. So a lot of these guys who have chronic injuries in the pros, that's because they're broken. But again, nobody is speaking out on that because it's a freaking cash cow for the dudes at the top, man. The dudes at the top are making beaucoup dollars off of parents and kids, parents who are hopeful of their kids finally loving the sport and being good enough to earn a scholarship to go Division I and hopefully to the league. It's like a pyramid scheme, bro. And it sucks. Earl Watson, I was reading, Earl Watson spoke out about that, about how these kids are, coming into the league broken already. Because coaches are favoring winning over development. So if you have to play a million games in a million minutes, you're going to do that. Meanwhile, the coach is just getting paid and he's chilling. And he's not responsible for developing. So that's another strike against basketball in the U.S. Another strike. Because of AAU and these travel ball teams, these kids in the NBA now, they're used to playing on stacked teams. Okay? Meaning prep schools and all that stuff, right? These kids, they really don't know what adversity is, a lot of them. They know that they're going to play on a team with their homies. And a lot of times their homies are some of the best players also. Or the best players become their homies. And they're traveling across the country and beating up on teams who aren't as good as them. So they're used to stacked teams. And when they get in the league and their team is not stacked, they struggle. And they don't know how to handle that adversity. You can see that when you watch the games. Like these guys, a lot of them don't know. They're ready to trade me. My team's not good enough. No, you were drafted to help us get good enough. But you don't know how to handle that adversity. Why? Because you've been playing on stacked teams for a long time. Your heart's not really in it. The competitiveness, right? The competitiveness is not there. You're not used to it. You're just used to your team being stacked and winning a lot of games. In AAU, traveling, Globetrotters essentially. But hey, in AAU, you were paying for it. In the NBA, you're cashing checks. Either way, it doesn't really matter. Right? Now that I'm making money, I don't really have to compete. I don't have to have that, as they say, that dog in me. Because, hey, I'm just going to sit here and make a lot of money. Even if I don't know how to lead. I've been playing on great teams for a long time, my whole life, basically. I sit here and cash my checks. But my heart's not really in it. Again, going back to when they first started, they may not have even wanted to be out there. Their heart's not in it. They don't love the competition. Don't really love the game. But they'll take the cash that comes with it. The fame, the notoriety that comes with it. Cats ain't gonna admit it, but you can see it. When you watch closely, you can see it. You can see how it happens. So when you combine all of that, I say all that to say, when you combine all of that with the influx of European players and international players in the NBA, there's something like 120 international players in the NBA right now. And it's just gonna keep growing. So when you combine all of the ills of our current state of basketball in the States, AU and travel ball and having to have a trainer and essentially gatekeeping, right? The gatekeeping that goes on with poor kids because they can't afford it. The nepotism because now if you know people, basically, will you get the opportunity? When you combine all of that, right, with USA basketball with the influx of international players, it's no wonder that the best players now in the league are essentially the guys who didn't go through that process. Because these guys, they have a different work ethic. They have a different love for the game. Like the 3 best players right now are like Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid. And I know Embiid came here at like 16 and he played in AAU, but he wasn't one of these cats who started playing AAU at like 8, 9 years old. So the European guys were coming over, and they've learned the fundamentals of the game, right? Or in Giannis's case, they just play much harder than everybody else, which is something I guess that's not taught, in our leagues anymore. Growing up in kids, and then you have Luka. Maybe we'll put him in the top 5, 7 players in the league as well. So a lot of the top players are coming into the NBA from overseas now. Like our homegrown talent ain't there. Part of it, I feel like, is that some of the best kids who could have been the best kids aren't able to make it to the NBA because they can't afford it. So even back in my day, cats who made it to the league and college and so forth, we could say that there's some guys, who could have, should have made it to the league, but they didn't because maybe their grades didn't line up, so on and so forth. Now, it's not just grades. It's dudes won't be able to make it because they can't afford it. So our current process is gatekeeping some of the best players out. We're not going to admit this. You're not going to find many cats that admit this. All right? But the current process is gatekeeping, and the players you see in the league now may not be the best players we have to offer, man. They just happen to be the dudes with the access. The legacy kids, the kids with connections. Their dads played, overseas or whatever. They could get the trainers. And not only the best players, but the role players now are becoming more international. It's changing, man. I'm telling you. I was reading an article on this. It was saying that Greg Popovich appears to prefer international players than homegrown NBA players because the international players don't come with all the baggage of AAU. Again, it's not me. I'm just a guy with a mic. Greg Popovich, one of the best coaches ever, if not the best coach ever in the NBA. Like just last year, Pop was complaining about, essentially his team, watching his team out there. It's like watching a circus, cats taking bad shots. Like, it's a struggle for people who love basketball and who are like basketball purists. It's a struggle, man. The game in the United States has changed. And I know the NBA is changing the rules and allowing cats more free-flowing offense to take up a bunch of three-pointers and analytics and so on. But everything taken into its entirety has changed. The kids don't love the sport because they're being forced into it, and they're growing up without really a love of the sport. Parents are having to pay for it, so the kids essentially have money on them right from the very beginning. Like, you have to play. You have to be good. You can't just sit in the house. And then those who don't have the money at a certain point get capped off for the most part. All of it goes into it, man. And that's why I say it's becoming like soccer in England. Because in England, the similarities are so crazy, man. England, birthplace of soccer. U.S., birthplace of basketball, right? Massachusetts. Best league in the world, basically, right? In basketball is the NBA. Best league in the world, you would say, for soccer, the Premier League, right? But the best players now in the Premier League aren't just English-born players, whereas the NBA used to be. The best players now in the NBA are international cats, Europeans, the Serbians, all over. And there's nothing wrong with that. But because I feel like the NBA and the process to reach the NBA and the developmental process is capping off a certain segment of our population, we're not getting as big of a crop of kids to hoop anymore, to reach those heights, because financially we're cutting them off. The connections, the nepotism is cutting off a lot of them. They won't be able to make it. So, again, like soccer, English soccer, right? We have the best league. We have the highest expectations. In the World Cup, the English fans have the highest expectations. Like, these cats have to win the World Cup, but they haven't won a World Cup in forever. Eventually, USA basketball is going to be in the same boat if we keep going down this route. As a matter of fact, if we were to take out, say, like the KD Steph generation, so let's say if we took out everyone with 10 or more years of experience in the NBA and put them out there to go play FIBA basketball, how many of us would be confident that that group would come back with the gold? Take out the NBA players, the homegrown American-born NBA players with 10 years or more experience, so the KD generation, Steph, these guys, right? And I'm doing that because, Jordan in that 92 Dream Team, like Jordan was, like 8 years or something like that, right? So you're in your prime. You should be in your prime at that point. So let's say 10 years and above. We took out KD. He's already won gold. So 10 years, so below 10 years, 9 and below. Will we be confident that a team of 9 players experienced 9 years and below can go win a gold medal right now in the Olympics? How much money would you be willing to bet on that? If that doesn't tell you the state of basketball in the U.S., I don't know what does. So, yeah, we have a lot of talent. In the U.S., we'll continue to have a lot of talent because we have a lot of damn people. But, man, the state of our basketball is struggling. I'm telling you. It's going to get to a point where we don't have the best basketball players in the world, and we're only going to have ourselves to blame because of the way we're structured right now, where we're capping off, we're limiting the pool of who can actually become great. And the process of becoming great is also sucks because kids aren't playing for the love of the game. They're not playing like the Joker whose instincts is crazy and he's just playing and dishing and his vision. Like, we're not playing like that. Kids are so structured. They're so robotic. They're overtrained. It's ridiculous. It's a problem. And we only have ourselves to blame. Can't blame nobody else. So the Europeans are coming over and dominating basketball like other countries go to the English Premier League and ball out. Like Portugal, with Ronaldo. Or Messi and all the Brazilians who dominate soccer in Europe. Yeah. Same thing, man. We'll have a lot of we'll continue to have a lot of great players, but it's going to get to a point where we get on the world stage, we're not going to be winning like that. And we can trace it back to no PE, kids don't love the game, and in a whole developmental process favoring only those who have money. I'm telling you right now. So how do we get back on track? I have a few recommendations. First of all, we got to get PE back in school, man. I don't know what we got to do. The government, if I were to be honest with you, man, I would think like this is a ploy by some people in the background to keep the hood down. Adam Silver is in it or something. Like because too many hood kids made it out and, they're giving back to the hood. So if they don't make it, they can't give back. I don't know, man. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? If I didn't know any better, that would be my conspiracy. Like Adam Silver is in bed with some of these government people trying to keep the hood down. Like you can't see that there's a lot of kids, poor kids who are missing out on this. Anyway, get PE back, all right? Government funding for PE. Please, get the kids sweating outside like I used to, all right? Parents, allow your kids to diversify, experiment, play with different sports. Yeah, kick them out of the house. Get them out. Get them away from the iPads. I know I'm guilty of it. I'm trying my best to do that. Like, go out there, man. Like, you can't touch your iPad until it's nighttime. All right? Let them experiment. Don't allow them to specialize. A lot of kids are doing that now. They're specializing in just basketball and playing basketball all the time or baseball all the time. Like, no. Allow them to experiment and learn and fall in love with the game. Then it will come naturally that they'll grow and want to learn. I would say more parents need to remove their kids from AAU, withhold their kids from AAU. But fear of missing out, FOMO, they're probably not going to do that. So that's not likely. All right. But I would say take your kids out of AAU unless one, your kid is 16 and up. So I would say AAU and those leagues should be 16 and up. And the parents, if you're going to put your kids in AAU, then you should make sure that the coach can actually coach. That your kid doesn't come out of AAU not knowing the fundamentals of basketball, of dribbling with their left hand and setting up on defense, and a big man knowing how to post up. Again, that's like putting your kids in music lessons and they don't know the bass and treble clef. Like, what the heck? They got to know the basics. So find good coaching for your kids, not just someone who says, hey, I'm a coach. All right? So 16 and up only for AAU, right? Allow kids to experiment. Find a good coach. That's on the parents. Now, the NBA, I think, has an opportunity here. And I read up on this, and this recommendation was made in an article I read. The first one is, in Europe, when these kids sign, and you hear, Luka's been playing since he was 16, these kids get signed early on, and then they're developed. And the teams are invested in their development. So instead of the kid paying the team is paying, invested in the kid developing and becoming great. So the NBA should invest in these youngsters. The NBA, to me, should hold tryouts, right? You try out, and the team says, okay, this guy is great. I'm going to choose him, right, regardless of his income status, regardless if he can pay into this AAU league. I'm going to invest in this kid becoming great. Now, because I'm paying him 50, whatever, couple $1,000 a year, but I can see the skill is there, the athleticism is there, and I can invest in him becoming great. That's the European model. You invested in Luka becoming great. That's why they start so young. It's an investment, whereas Luka is not paying to play AAU, right? And the coach could give a damn. So that's my recommendation. The league can do that. If they really wanted to, the league can invest in the youngsters so that we don't exclude the poor kids. We can make a bigger pool, man. The bigger the pool, the better, right? We say the same thing in corporate America. We say the same thing. When you exclude people for whatever reason, race, color, whatever, like you limit the pool. The best mind could be out there, but you're not bringing them in because you're limiting the pool. The better athlete could be out there, but you're not bringing them in because you've limited the pool to just the rich kids. Or the kids with money. Not just rich, but the kids with money and the connection. And then lastly, I guess what could happen is players can speak out. Some of these guys can speak out. Durant, Braun, some of these guys and I know these guys, these guys use their money for good in the communities already, right? And they support AAU teams and this and that, but they can speak out against this model because it's hurting and people aren't seeing. I'm telling you, in a couple years, the NBA is going to continue to be great. The best players are going to be in the NBA, but America is not going to be the best basketball nation anymore at this rate. All right? Not only are our kids not getting physical education, they have an incentive to stay inside now. And then when they do get put into sports, they're not being developed, they're not being coached properly. For the most part, they're getting exposure. They're being thrown out there. But you're not truly learning how to play the game. And they're not having an opportunity to fall in love with the game. Yeah, it doesn't look as bad now. We still have some great players, some great young players. But those great young players is not translating to the best. And I know America likes to be the best. I'm telling you, we're gonna start feeling it if this construct that we have doesn't change. And we gotta start making a change from the grassroots level all the way on up. The process sucks. And we gotta do something about it. So yeah, so Bron, Durant, some of these guys, CP, they can speak out against that stuff. They can speak out more loudly, and influence change. Because they have that power, they have that voice. Say, hey man, this sucks. This process sucks. We're keeping out a hell of a lot of kids because of X, Y, and Z. They can't afford a trainer. They can't pay for AAU and travel ball. Like, essentially, if you don't have those connections, you're not super gifted early on, and you get luckily recognized, like the coach who found Ja Morant, right? It was accidental. The guy went to get soda and chips or something from a vending machine or something like that, and he accidentally saw Ja Morant in another game. If that doesn't happen, then what? So we just got to do better, man. I hope we do better. For people like me who love basketball and who want to see the best of our kids playing basketball, there's a huge opportunity to improve. This is not to bash people. This is just a, hopefully, wake us up a little bit, because the world is passing us by. These European players are going to keep coming, and they're going to keep getting better. Pretty soon we're going to look and be like, damn, the top 10 players in the NBA are not American. We're just going to wake up one day. Like, damn, what happened? Well, this dude tried to warn you a few years back. All right, y'all, I went super long today, but I'm really passionate about this one because as I'm coaching I-9, I'm thinking about I-9 and AAU like it's all one big thing, how our sports process has become so exclusive now. Like, thankfully, I can afford to put my kids, but honestly, I don't know if I would want to even pay for them to be in AAU if they're not going to be coached right. But then what about the parents who can't afford to put their kids in I-9 and AAU? They're stuck. Because AAU gives you that exposure. Again, 71% of people in the players in the NBA went through AAU. So if you can't make it to AAU, then you're likely not going to make it to the NBA in the United States. It's just going to get even worse if we don't fix it. Anyway, super long episode today. But I appreciate y'all hanging in. More to come on that. All right. Obviously, NBA offseason is going to keep rolling. More trades. I'm sure free agency is about to start at end of the month, end of June, beginning of July. So you'll be hearing more from me on that. But in the meantime, be good. It's posting the real shit. Mind filming. Peace.
I'm going straight to the top. Just put the stack on the clock. I am Ray Allen's a shot. I'm going straight to the top.